because I talked to you, and obviously I just put the topic down of just 80s stuff and like killer clowns, just monster
Mhm.
movies in general from that era, because I feel like we've lost a bit of magic
Right.
from from not replacing practical effects, but kind of just washing them over with CGI.
Yeah.
Because there's always such a magic to practical effect, like Jurassic Park.
Mhm.
Jurassic Park is a beautiful mingle of it, and you can never it can't be topped, in my
Right.
opinion. Like, the new movies try, because they try mingling practical and CGI, but
Yeah.
they rely so heavily on CGI,
Mhm.
and you can never unsee the huge actual sized T-Rex puppet that they
Yeah.
used for the original movie that consistently broke down, but we'll not talk about that. That's the downside of practical effects. You
Right.
have to deal with technology. Unless it's more the makeup effects and stuff. That's why I love killer clowns and
Mhm.
other reasons, but we're not going to get into that. Um, because Killer Clowns was basically made by special effects artists, the Chiodo brothers,
Mhm.
that you will know from Critters. They were the designers of the Critters.
Mm.
And they were also the stop motion effects special behind Elf
Oh.
with Will Ferris. Like, they did all the stop motion for that. Like the
Mhm.
whales and the snowmen, and they also did the little stop motion short, I think, with other people.
Okay.
And it was great. And obviously, Killer Clowns, 2 million budget, basically a shoestring compared to big box
Right.
office. And most of that fund went to making a working popcorn gun and
Mhm.
production. The production, shit you not. All that money, $2 million, went towards a working popcorn cannon
Uh-huh.
and just production things like going to Santa Fe and everything. I think it was Santa Fe. It was somewhere in California where they shot on this little, like Coney Island style strip.
Mhm.
The rest, the special effects, the Chiodo brothers basically did out of their backyard and stuff. Like they made the masks, they made the guns and everything out of like Tinker toys and everything, because that's what special effects were back in the day.
Mhm.
Like even with the xenomorph on Alien, the little strands on the side are made out of condoms. Like if you look at the little strippy muscles on the jawline, that's just a Trojan.
Mhm.
Like, oh, it's so good. And I think condoms also went into the bladder effects that were rampant in the 80s when the skin bubbles and such
Mm.
for, like, say, The Howling or Troll,
Right.
which was disgusting. And the only problem with that was because, obviously condoms are quite flexible, the bladder effect would explode
Mm.
because they had to push against the latex of the skin and pump the air into it and just would push, 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 boom.
Mhm.
So you'd get outtakes on The Howling where the condom would just completely blow the back out of the werewolf.
Right.
Oh, sorry if I'm blabbering, by the way. If you want to ask and
That's the
talk
point of
about
this
something,
show.
please.
I just want you
I
to
know,
info
I know,
dump at me.
I, I know, I, I just don't want to interrupt if you want to ask
No,
something.
no, the floor is all yours.
Oh, man. Like, there's always, like, a certain... It always feels better with practical effects, and
Mhm.
obviously there's been a lack of it. Not out of expense, because as I can say, if you're clever, you can make it out of anything, like,
Right.
school grade plasticine or fucking condoms, as said. But because it's been unionized, obviously, productions don't do it because they can't abuse it,
Mhm.
and with time constraints. But I don't know. I would take cheap practical effect over cheap CGI any
Right.
day,
Yeah.
because you could with cheap CGI, it's nothing. It's like a bit like Sharknado. Sharknado is very fine, but it's like meh.
Yeah.
And but at least with a cheap practical effects, like Deadly Spawn, which
Mhm.
was the little low-grade 70s horror film about, little mutant piranha things from the planet Mars.
Mhm.
At least it was there. It's there on the screen. I feel like
Yeah.
there's always something more. It feels like it's more to the actor and the audience
Yeah.
if there's something there for them to go off of, not like you and Jackie were talking earlier, like with the Twilight,
Yeah.
where it's just men in green screen suits. That infamous image of
Mhm.
Kirsty just petting the man's head will not
Yeah.
leave me. Oh.
Yeah, we had a moment when we got to that bit in the movie where Jackie started freaking out, being like, "That's where this is from."
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. But yeah, if they had just obviously with time, they couldn't have, because
Right.
they were just pumping it out year
Mhm.
after year at this point. I think it would have done better if they just gotten a giant fake wolf head,
Mhm.
because at least it would be something for her to actually react off of,
Yeah.
instead of absently petting this man's head.
So I just feel like with cheap CGI, there's like it's almost groan-inducing, where it's like no one
Yeah,
enjoys it. Whereas with bad practical effects, like even if they're bad, there's like an inherent charm to it.
exactly. Like even I'm trying to think of a very Trolls 2.
Mhm.
Terrible movie. Fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But like just the men in the masks, and the men and the people turning into plants, and the popcorn. It's all silly, and I love it, and it's ridiculous. And as said, like with Killer Clowns, it's not an expensive film compared to, like, big budget places
Mhm.
and big budget fix, because as said, all the money went to production. And the Chiodos were like, fuck it. We'll just make the clowns ourselves without money.
Mhm.
And they just tinkered away in their shed, and they made these big grotesque things, and it was great. And I remember looking at the production and everything, and like they had four set shapes for the clown masks. It was a peanut shape, a circle shape, a triangle shape, and an inverse triangle. And they made about, I think, 25 separate masks out of
Mm.
those shapes, all with unique like colors and such. And
Mhm.
it was great, because you can look at the movie and can see all these different styles of clowns and everything, and obviously some heads are swapped with some bodies and blah 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 blah. But it's great, and all the clowns have names. All the clowns on that
Mhm.
screen, apart from 2 or 3, have names, and it's almost kind of infuriating watching it, because every now and then my friends and that will be watching it silently with me, and I'll just be like, "There's Joe, there's Slumbo, there's Shorty, there's Danny,
Yeah, I
there's
think
Storefront."
because I remember the first time I ever watched that movie, I messaged you. I'm like, "Hey, I'm watching this for the first time," and you just like insta joined the call.
I
And
apparated out
yeah,
of
it was
nowhere.
so fun to have you there and just talk about the movie while we were watching it.
Oh, I love it so much. I love passion
Hmm.
projects like that, because you can tell it wasn't made with serious avant-garde
Right.
work here. They literally just thought of killer clowns from outer space, and then they made it, and it's
Hmm.
great. The thing that makes it so good is both the imagination in the kills, because it's clowns from space. You can go any kind of
Right.
circus shenanigans with it,
Mhm.
and the fact that the human characters play it off so straight laced, like the horror is real.
Right.
Just seen a man almost get flattened by a giant silly hammer, but the people play it off like Jason Voorhees has just appeared in front of
Yeah.
them. It's great when people play it so straight laced. It's great. It just reminds you that, oh right, this is actually really horrific.
Right.
Hmm.
Because like as an audience viewer, you're like, "Oh, this is so silly and funny and crazy that this is happening." But like if you were in that situation in real life, you would not be thinking about how funny it is.
Yeah, it's like, like and the moments that remind you, because like the film is obviously comedic. We as the audience absorb it and we're like, this is so fucking stupid. It's great. And then there are moments that like the kid almost getting lured out of the burger joint,
Right.
like that's make you go, oh. Oh, that's a bit and the man being used as a meat ventriloquist puppet, and you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh. Oh right, it's horror. I love shit like that. Shit, like films that are so unassuming and so silly. You're like, ha 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 ha, and then actual horror happens, and you're like, oh, lovely. I love that. Or horror that obviously with going back with practical effects and stuff, obviously because sometimes they can't have full prosthetics, they work around it, like with Bruce, the mechanical shark from Jaws. They couldn't show all of it because, it was a big fucking fish on a
Right.
stick. Couldn't show all of it. So they had to hide it and they had to keep it secret and all that good stuff, and just how they did it and let the mind, like, play with your ideals and such. It's a bit like Silent Hill, where it's like, oh, I don't know what any of this looks like, so my mind is just going to take hold of
Right.
it and fuck with you. Like Alien. Alien was mostly held in the dark. Because, if you saw the big, this nearly 7-foot tall man in the full costume, where half the time he had to wear giant Nikes and be followed by a man with a big tub of KY jelly, it would be stupid. That was apparently, according to interviews, the funniest thing the cast members ever saw, because there was just they got this huge basketball player to come in, because he was also an interpretive dancer and he could move that way for the alien. And they would just see this giant man in the alien costume strolling down the halls with this little man with a big flaring ascot behind him with a huge tub of KY jelly. And every time the alien needed re-slimed, this little man would go, "I'll do it," and went over and caressed this poor alien's ass with jelly. It's like so eager, like, "I'll rub the alien."
What a job.
What a job. But it must be so fun. Like one of my favorite things when I used to buy DVDs, when buying DVDs was just a thing you did, was the specials and the special effects and the behind the scenes. Like my favorite one was from the Evil Dead box series, because the Evil Dead has one of the highest wound rates of any film when it comes to doing it, because Sam Raimi was such a bastard to Bruce Campbell, just whipping him with trees. And also the state of scleral lenses, because they had to use those because back in the day they didn't have contacts that could have opaque. So scleral lenses were just huge hunks of glass that they stuck in their eyes, and it would ache. So every now and then it would be like, oh wow, the effects, they actually look really puffy and hurt and inflamed. They look possessed. No, that was real. That was real pain. They could only wear them for 15-minute stints.
Man,
it was awful. Oh, I love it. I love it. Evil Dead is awesome. Another film that was started on a shoestring budget and just went on its own thing. Because I think, that's why I love it. Because like as I said, practical effects don't have to be expensive. They just need to be good looking.
Yeah.
And you could do that with anything. Obviously you're gonna have your show-offs, your kings like Tom Savini and Rick Baker, the later who did one of my favorite films of all time, American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah,
which is such a bastion of special effects.
For sure.
Like the transformation, which was done in reverse, but obviously played forward for the film because they couldn't add hair, so they just whipped off hair. I love it. I love shit like this. I love when people put the effort into things and it's just a lot of fun. And yes. I love just even the most like grotesque and silly, because there are films in the recent that have done special effects and everything, like with practical work. And I don't know if it's just me, but like the realism of them is both very it's both very impressive with how the realism like in the Hostel movies. But I feel like there's a lack of a charm to the silliness that's been lost with the 80s. Say like in Scanners, where you just saw a man's like, head explode.
Yeah.
Or Videodrome, where you saw James Woods make love to a TV screen. And pull a VHS tape out of his body. There's something, I don't know, I guess I like the more horror, fantasy, and sci-fi aspects of things, I guess. Because there's something... Because realistic things make me queasy. Especially things with eyes.
Oh, yeah,
I love
same.
Dario Argento, and how he has done things with eyes is both marvelous in the how the hell did you do that and make it look real, and also in a sort of full body shudder kind of
Yeah. Yeah, I can rarely handle anything to do with the eyes or fingernails. I'm like, nope, bye.
Just, the fingernails. Like, well, I think, what was it? The fingernails were actually a good thing, because what they would either make a hand cast of it, or they would, what was that fucking story I heard? They would vacuum seal a marigold.
Oh.
Like the fucking kitchen gloves. And
Yeah.
they'd put a fake nail on top of it.
Huh.
And beneath the fake nail, they would have a little tube running under it, so when they would pull it off, blood would spurt from it. So, just it's great. It's wonderful. I love shit like this. I feel like I've rushed everything. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. Zem asked if you've seen Monster in the Closet.
Monster in the Closet.
Which I don't think I've heard of that.
It raises a few memories, but I can't remember all of it. Monster in the Closet. It's like those things where you're like, I've heard of that. Where have I heard it from?
Yeah.
Monster in the Closet. I've seen my pet monster.
Mm.
Let me see if I can look at the poster and see if it. This seems like a film that looks like a metaphor. Honestly. Mostly because the tagline is "It's out, it's out, it's out."
Well.
Monster in the Closet. It's out, it's out. That was also a thing in the 80s. To be fair, like the vilifying of LGBT, which was not fun.
Right.
But then again, the 80s were not known for its sensitivity. Looks at most racial depictions in film.
And Pax asked, have you seen the David Hasselhoff from the SpongeBob movie?
That's a wonderful effect.
It's such a good effect.
They actually made a body cast. The way they made body cast is the same way they make it now. They used basically dental paste, what they use to reseal teeth. They use en masse of dental paste to cover you up and make a mold out of you.
Oh god.
Or at least you hold the mold, because what the hell is it? It's like it's a sort of gum, and then the dental paste, and then they peel it off you. That is the worst part of special effects, from what I've heard. Especially when it's a head mold.
Yeah.
Because they have to cover you with the gum, then the paste, to like keep it in like a cast form. And to make sure you don't suffocate, they stick straws up your nose.
Oh yeah, I've seen those. Like I said earlier, I used to watch Face Off a lot. I think Mythbusters, they'd also make face molds a lot. And I always got so claustrophobic watching them do it.
It's the worst looking thing. It looks like hell, and you're just you are given the turtle treatment. You just get straws stuck up your nose,
Yeah.
and basically put in place for like, depending on how much gum and dental stuff is used, possibly an hour. To the max an hour till it sets, and that is hellish to think about.
Yeah, I think I would just die and explode if someone had to make a head mold of me.
Mm-hmm. Like, head molds, body molds especially, because a lot of young ladies in the 80s, because it was the 80s, and a lot of young ladies had to have their boobas out.
Mm-hmm.
They had to have full models of that, so they could get chopped up and everything and stabbed and all that nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And because it had to be applied by hand, it couldn't be like gently like scraped onto the tool. It had to be applied on hand, because the fingers could get into the crease and stuff. I couldn't think of anything more invasive.
Yeah.
Because there's been rather unfortunate stories of some tech hands being a little grabby when it comes to coating the boobs, and that is the unfortunate side, because the movie's situation is the movie situation. No matter if it's a fun movie or it's a bad movie, there's always going to be something that happens behind the scenes. It's like,
right.
But that never happened on Killer Clowns, so thumbs up.
Well, that's good.
Always winning. Oh.
I just remember the first time I watched Killer Clowns, I was like so obsessed with the set design too.
It's wonderful. Most of the work is matte painting and such. Like and at first I couldn't tell. When I was younger, I could not tell. Nowadays you can tell a little bit more, but like even then, it's like, huh. Like the first time into the cotton candy room,
right.
That's a matte painting. The most that they have is the 2 cotton candy stands and the popcorn machine, and the rest is just a whole matte painting. And it's like, God, and everything is beautifully done and colorful and silly. Gotta have the silly. I love it to pieces. The silliness, it remains silly to this day, and it's wonderful. I miss camp films like that.
I know.
I miss films like Rocky Horror Picture Show is quote unquote problematic apparently as it is. I don't know.
I adore that movie.
I love that movie, but we've lost something. We've lost the camp. We've lost like things like Fright Night and things like Killer Clowns and things like Rocky Horror Picture Show. I don't know, because maybe it's gone out of fashion, maybe because it's considered quote unquote too silly for modern movies and such. I don't know. I feel like it's a load of stupidity, honestly.
Yeah.
The idea that
I think a lot of it is just trying to appeal to a more general audience. And like practical effects have definitely gone out of style. They're kind of coming back.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot. Like, it isn't my favorite series, mostly because it goes extremely hard. But Terrifier, Terrifier 1 and 2 with Art the Clown. Hate the clown. Not my flavor of clown. But like the practical effects, like the woman getting sawed in half, like vertically. Like it was wonderful, and the scenes in Terrifier 2 where a woman is just completely like ravaged, like she gets her hand split into like a fucking chicken being deboned and gets peeled, and it's all practical effects. It's torture porn, but it's practical effects, so it's like ew. It's gruesome, but you also are like, how the fuck did they do that? I think if it's a practical effect that makes you go, how the fuck did they do that, then it's a good practical effect.
Right. I think Long put it really well. He said, we're so culturally tuned into irony and afraid to be genuine and passionate and fear being cringe, and it sucks. And
And I agree. Like,
that's what Cringemas is all about, though. It's like,
exactly.
we should be allowed to be cringy.
Like, when I every now and then I see, when I mention Killer Clowns, like, oh, that fucking kids film, what a fucking load of shit. Shut the fuck up. I don't care. It's fun. It's one of the few films that does what it says on the tin. What more could you want? sometimes you need to just go balls out and enjoy something silly.
Yeah.
The world's an awful place. Enjoy the silliness.
Like, we should be allowed to be goofy every once in a while.
Yeah, let yourself be goofy.
Like,
Like,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just wording and vocal stimming from whilst I'm trying to keep my brain in one place.
Like, I had Jackie watch Mad Max Fury Road for the first time.
Oh.
And granted, it's not a horror movie and it is a modern film, but like a lot of it is practical effects and it does let itself get a little silly sometimes.
Yeah, it's almost like a sort of modern fantasy. You know what I like to call it's almost like a sort of modern never-ending story with how it's shot.
Yeah.
Because some of them, like, it's obviously set in a sort of quasi-realistic state, but it's almost fantastical. Like the swamp with the
oh my
bullet
god, the
farmers
swamp.
and the sort of long stilt-walking creatures, and like that's like a scene from the Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
And the blues and the bright reds and the giant tornado with the
I'm
kids
obsessed with the colors in that movie.
More films need color.
I know.
I am sick to death of the grays and the light browns and the seriousness of it all. Like, going back, and I feel like the 80s have influenced a lot, because kids are growing up from the 80s and becoming creators and, film designers and filmmakers. And it shows in Waikiki, who made a lot of the new Marvel movies, and they're so colorful and bright and have great music. Not to dismiss modern music, but the 80s have a vibe.
They really
80s
do.
music has such a good vibe with the butt rock and the power ballads, and that's one of my favorite things from 80s horror movies, actually.
Oh yeah.
Just hearing what earworm in the background is going to be like, Like, one of my favorites is Darkest Side of the Night, from, of all things, Jason Takes Manhattan. Because it's just a silly little, 3-minute song, but, it goes so deep, and it's part of a film that is, not great, but fun.
Yeah.
A film that's just make you go, this is so silly when it comes to the lore, but then you think of the other films and you're like, you know what, it's not that silly. Also, apropos of nothing, but, well, actually apropos of Friday the 13th, I will defend Jason X till death. It's not a bad film.
Right.
It's silly, and it has good kills. A woman gets her head frozen and smashed in, and that's all practical effects.
Right, that's the one in space, right?
Yes, it's the space one. Also, the simulation of him seeing the sleeping bag girls, and it's just every 80s stereotype of, do you want to smoke some pot and have some premarital sex?
Yeah.
And it cuts to blah 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 scene, then it cuts back, and he's just swinging them in sleeping bags against the fucking trees.
Right.
Said this on my own stream, but it's the second most funniest sleeping bag death. The first one belongs to Prophecy, which is an 80s film which doesn't treat Native Americans that kindly, but has a giant mutant bear that swings a paw at a boy in a sleeping bag, and he just explodes. It just dissolves into feathers. It's fantastic. Oh. We have lost something joyous with the loss of silly deaths in films.
Yeah.
Because I get it, death is meant to be serious and everything, but we need to take back from the 80s and just have ridiculous things like people having their heads frozen and crushed.
Yeah.
Or, I sound like a serial killer. Or, oh, what is it? People just being bisected out of nowhere by giant, hockey mask. Don't know why I was struggling on the word hockey for some reason. Wielding maniacs. We don't have a modern serial killer, do we? Apart from, I guess, Ghostface, but he's from the 90s, and I miss Jason.
Yeah.
He's in the legal battles, but I miss him to death.
Yeah. Yeah, there isn't really a modern slasher franchise that isn't just like a reboot.
Yeah, like it's either they get rebooted and they're awful, like Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm.
I don't mind the modern Nightmare on Elm Street. In fact, I think the actor that played Freddy Krueger was quite good.
Mm-hmm.
But it missed a lot of things in how it is, because you go back to the old Freddy, and the first film started off quite a serious film, and then they went basically batshit insane.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you had things like the Dream Warriors, where he would go into these kids' dreams, and they had dream powers, and this kid who's in, deep into D&D is like the wizard master in his dreams and tries to cast a spell on Freddy and gets his heart ripped out. It's like, oh.
Oh, you know what? Oh, go ahead.
No.
That just reminded me of something else, but if you have something more to say on that.
No, I was just bubbling away.
Yeah, because, like, we're talking about, like, we were trying to say, like, oh, modern films don't, like, have, like, camp and practical effects anymore. But what you just said reminded me that, have you seen the D&D movie?
I have. I will say that's beautiful. And Psycho Gorman.
Like, I just adored the D&D movie so much.
The audio glitch in the Bard just made my day. I remember seeing that with my friends, and when they did break, just that is a beautiful mix of practical and CGI. When they blend it together, that's when I love it the most. Something that got me pissed off was the Thing sequel or prequel.
Oh,
because
yeah.
They had practical effects. All of it was practically, practical effects. And then some gonk at the studio just went, nah, it doesn't look good. Get the CGI in. And I'm like, And it makes me feel so bad for the people that sweat and bled into those effects.
Yeah.
Because then they get all pasted over.
Yeah, that's one of the things that drove me insane with Jurassic World. It's like, oh yeah, we're doing practical effects on, like, the velociraptors and stuff, but then they just CG'd over it, so, like, you can't even tell.
Yeah, the Blue's head in the sort of muzzle cage was practical, that had a moving eye and stuff, and then they replaced it with CGI. I was like, well, what's the point? You had it!
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to besmirch, CGI. Besmirch CGI, but, like, practical effects, the solidness of it, the actual physicality, it always feels more to, like, the whole film experience. It feels like you could reach out and touch it.
Yeah.
I said, done well before, because the way they shot Jurassic Park, it was in a certain, frame. Like it was done with a certain frame rate and a certain cinematic, much smarter word than I can think of at the moment. But yeah, I feel like having a more physicality to a film gives it more life and such. Because I'll always remember the first Jaws, even the bad Jaws sequels like Jaws 3, where it was just ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Jaws 3 is a mess of a film, but at least the shark was real. It wasn't. Well, sometimes it was real, sometimes it was just a model that they gently flew on a 3D ground. Oh,
but yeah, like with like I don't watch too much Star Wars stuff. We had Carl on last time to talk about Star Wars, and that was like all new info to me.
Ooh.
But the one thing I know about the Mandalorian is, like, they had a puppet for Baby Yoda. And, like, famously, when they were done shooting, like, someone would go in with, like, one of those, like, reflector things, just with, like, an empty scene so they could do, like, CG stuff. And the director's like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, this is just so, like, if we need to, we can do CG in post. A said, we're not doing that. Stop that right now. So he, like, basically stopped them from doing, like, empty backdrops for CG potential, because he wanted to be like, no, I'm not giving you an excuse to do this in post. We are doing practical, and that's it.
Hell yeah.
And it was like so cool to see like what extent they did like practical effects on the Mandalorian. Even though I've never seen an episode of it in my goddamn life, it was still really cool to learn about stuff like that.
How they did the backgrounds in Star Wars and in some horror films was just thrilling, like, because it is mostly matte paintings. Like the first time we see Darth Vader leave the ship, and it's like this massive stormtroopers. That's all painting. That's amazing to me. We've lost something in the joy of matte painting.
Which apparently that's something they're also bringing back in Star Wars, which I'm very excited about.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. I hope we just get more movies where it's just matte painting. I want to see just. I just want matte painters to get more love.
Oh my god, yeah.
Again, a bias. Killer clowns.
No, I have such a soft spot for matte painted backgrounds. I always talk about this too when like the subject of old movies comes up, but I refuse to like watch anything in 4K, like especially older movies, but even modern ones. But like
4K ruins some of the stuff that old
really
movies
does.
like film like is meant to keep secret. Like Sleepaway Camp, quite a problematic movie. But there's a scene where you see someone stood, like, you know, out at the door frame, and it's meant to be blacked out because the film reel they used was meant to be, like, you know, dark and such. And when you play it back in 4K, you see the person's face! It's meant to be secret, and in 4K you see this person's face. Not everything has to be glossy. What does it fucking say? Sometimes expensive things are worse.
But like there's you lose like so much of the like artistic intent and direction with movies when you translate them from VHS to DVD up to like 4K Blu-ray. Because like a lot of the time with like VHS, like they had the aspect ratio and like the low quality in mind. Like Alien is an example I always see brought up when it comes to, with like VHS movies. It's like you said, a lot of it was shot in the dark, and when you have VHS films like that, you get like a lot of the like static noise and stuff, and your brain does a lot to fill in the blanks of like what could be in the dark, and it starts playing tricks on you. And when you upgrade that to 4K and you just have solid black, like that element's completely lost.
It's some people make unneeded changes to films that didn't need it. Like sometimes they'll just touch up films with CGI and everything. They're like, why? You didn't need that. I'm trying to think of the most egregious form of E.T. The release, the anniversary release of E.T., where they touched up E.T.'s face and basically gave him a CGI face.
Yeah.
The worst thing I've ever seen. That puppet was made by the same man who helped H.R. Geiger create the Alien. Like, he was the man behind the mechanics, and just Carlo Rambaldi, that was his name. And like, to take away the work from Carlo Rambaldi and just replace it with CGI, I felt so angered.
Yeah, I think that was because that's what happened with a lot of the Star Wars special editions too, where they were just like CGing over everything like crazy.
Oh yeah, having CGI banthas in the background pooping on the ground.
Oh, that's a good point with pixel art too. Actually, I can't remember if I read or watched it, but I saw something interesting that was talking about how like pixel art has evolved in modern years to like emulate like what we like. It's interesting because like modern pixel art, it's like what we remember pixel art being but on modern TVs, because like obviously they were made for CRT TVs that would like blur them together and make solid images rather than pixel art. But like seeing them on high def screens and people being like, yeah, this is my childhood. So they try and recreate those, but they're recreating the images from modern TVs rather than what they saw on CRTs.
Yeah. And it comes out, the colors don't come out bright.
Mm-hmm.
Because, they're seeing it from VHS, which I was a big fan of VHS, grew up in the era, and, the quality is not great when
Right.
it comes to color sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Oh my god, yeah, the Audrey 2 puppet. Oh.
Oh my god, the Audrey 2 puppet. Okay, I have a wonderful fun fact about the Audrey 2 puppet when it came to the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, because it was so large, it was harder to puppet because it's a huge,
Right.
massive thing. So what they did was they had Rick Moranis during the whole big green mean green mother scene.
Mm-hmm.
They had Rick Moranis acting at half speed
Oh.
whilst they played the song at half speed, and they just sped it up.
That's so fun.
It's great. They did the same with the supper time third reprise with Audrey 2. Audrey and Audrey 2, should I say. Blah, 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 blah. And it's great. That they also had, what the hell did they have for they had something called a nuclear core, which isn't what it sounds like. It's basically a form of rod that basically was flexible. So it meant that, it could move and shift and twist at any angle, so they could use it for the plant tendrils and all that. So that meant it could have a wider range of motion, almost like a finger or a tongue. And it was amazing. I don't know if they actually called it the nuclear core. I just remember it from a behind the scenes, another one of the behind the scenes menageries that I watched as a child.
Right.
I had a lot of them. I had one for Hellraiser, which I was especially indulgent in because for the longest time I thought they actually did put nails in that poor actor's head. No, it was a skin piece. Delicate skin piece that he kept for everything.
Pax asked if you have a favorite effect or technique used in practical effects.
A favorite effect or technique? I think one of my favorite effect or techniques is Kevin Bacon's death from Friday the 13th, the first movie. Because Tom Savini had basically wanted to find out how he could stick an arrow through Kevin Bacon's neck. So he used an old technique he used from Martin, storyteller of a serial killer, story of a serial killer, and made a fake body of Kevin, and the rest of Kevin's body would just sit in the side while his head was stuck out. The idea was they were going to use an air pump to push the blood up when the arrow came through. The pump broke, so Tom Savini's assistant at the time panicked and basically went, "Oh shit," grabbed the tube that was still full of blood from the broken pump and went so it jutted out in this sort of realistic pumping action of an arterial flow, and it worked perfectly. That is one of my favorite effects. That, and obviously, because I'm biased, Killer Clowns.
Right.
The masks from Killer Clowns. There's something, they don't have a wide range of motion, but when they do move, it's like, they're almost like pugs. It's the wrinkleness of them, and I adore them. Oh. Just been spouting utter nonsense.
Omni asked if there are any techniques or discoveries of special effects that ended up advancing technology in completely unrelated industries.
I'm trying to think, actually. I don't know if I studied that deep into it because, I was just a child and,
Right.
I just loved hearing about certain things. I think there was an instance where a certain latex couldn't be used for a film, so instead what they did, they mixed latex with... What the hell was it they used? I think it was dental sealing gum. You're going to hear a lot about dental stuff in this. and basically they made it a perfect thing for a crackle effect, where a man was dried up and it cracked. So when it did, the top of the latex would break open, and you would see the pink gum that they'd laid in with blood. So it looked like this man had dried out, and the insides were still gushing. Can't remember what the film was. I think it was a foreign one. You will see a lot of foreign films with a lot of horrible effects. Ooh, especially one. Can't remember what it was called. I think it's called The Graveyard, or The Graveyard of Hell, or something like that. Completely different name, where a woman basically throws up her entire organs. Everything. The lungs, the intestines. It's grotesque. And they do it so well that I even had to be like,
I did see someone earlier bring up Doctor Who, because I think that's a good modern example of something that has that's campy and also has good practical effects, especially with the Slovene.
Yeah, I never got into Doctor Who. I watched a few things when I was younger, but I do agree that practical and CGI mingled with a lot of camp, because the people who play Doctor Who are just having a good ball of a time. And yeah, I agree. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Did you know the Weeping Angels in Doctor Who? A lot of people think they're just like statues and things, but no, those are people in suits with makeup on who just have to hold very still.
There was a what the hell? They're either in suits that don't basically cover their feet, or when it's like full widescreen things, they're in suits, but on the bottom of their feet they have these basically little turnstiles that the dresses cover with little breaks. So whenever the lights go off, they can shift them. I think they use that for some live shows, which is terrifying to think of.
Right. But that kind of comes back to like you get really creative stuff when you have such a limited budget. To the point where I hate big budget movies, because it just causes them to take a lot of creative shortcuts, even though they have all this extra money. But the reason we have
money in the wrong places.
Yeah, the reason we have Weeping Angels is because Don't Blink, or the episode Blink, was made because that was a cost saving episode, because they couldn't afford to have the big actors like David Tennant in every single episode. So that episode was spawned out of the fact that they needed to save money on the budget. So okay, the Doctor's barely gonna be in it. We need to make we have 1 or 2 settings. We have these nobody actors, and they're just okay, we need a cheap monster we can film. So that's why they made the Weeping Angels. Yeah. And I want budgets slashed so we can have more creative stuff like this.
The less materials you are given, the more creative you have to the more out of the box you have to think, because it's as I said, the condoms, the dental gum, everything is great. Live practical effect, yeah.
There's a scene in Blink where it's just a weeping angel pointing at a light bulb that's flickering on and off, but it is the most terrifying part of the episode.
It just shows how such a brief effect can just stick with people, because the Weeping Angels are now infamously famous. And said this brief glimpses of the alien, the brief glimpses of Bruce the Shark from Jaws. It's great.
Yeah.
I don't know. We need more practical effects. We
really
need more people being. I feel like there's a resurgence and stuff because people are making fan films of Friday the 13th, and they're fantastic. And people are making things like Psycho Gorman,
right? And
these horror films that are coming out from kids that grew up in the 80s and are just ha ha hee hee ha ha. It's going buck wild and bringing back a resurgence of camp. I love it.
Yeah.
The comment on live practical effects, that's just theater. That is just theater. The amount of times that people had to have their throat slashed open and have red appear, or that would usually be talking as a theater kid. If you had your throat slashed open, it would just be a neck piece that you had to keep your head dead straight on for the rest of the thing until the throat slashing happened. You would tip your head up, and the little opening would open up, and like, oh my god, throat slashed.
Well, we do have PAX coming up next, so if you have any closing thoughts before we end it here.
Watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space. You will not regret it. Unless you have clown phobia. Then don't do it. But even then, do it. They explode at the end, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's the journey, not the destination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a treat.
Thank you for being here.